It was a quiet morning on Highway 12. The sky was clear and the sun was just rising. Officer Blake sipped his coffee and leaned back in his police car. It was supposed to be a calm day. Nothing special, just routine patrol. Blake had been a cop for 12 years. He had seen many things, some good, some terrible. But today, he had no idea what was coming. As he watched the road, a black SUV passed by. The right taillight was broken. Blake turned on his lights and followed it. The SUV slowly pulled over to the side. "Routine stop," Blake said to himself. He stepped out of his car and walked slowly toward the SUV. His hand rested on his belt near his gun, just in case. He reached the driver's window. A black woman sat behind the wheel. Her hands were on the steering wheel. Her eyes were calm but tired. "Good morning, ma'am," Blake said. "Your right tail light is out." The woman nodded. "I know. I was going to fix it today." Blake looked around. The car was clean inside. Then he looked toward the back seat. And that's when something felt strange. Two small children sat there. Black twins. A boy and a girl. They looked about 8 years old. Both sat still, side by side, not saying a word. The girl was holding something in her lap. It was a folded American flag, the kind given at military funerals. The boy sat with a worn-out badge in his hands. Not a toy, a real badge. It looked old but important. Blake's heart skipped a beat. He looked back at the woman. "Are these your kids?" She nodded again. "Yes. They okay?" "They're fine." But something in her voice didn't sound fine. It was quiet, controlled, like she was hiding something. Blake looked at the children again. They didn't move. Their eyes didn't blink. The boy looked straight at him, and Blake felt something strange, like the boy was reading him. "Where? Are you all headed?" Blake asked. "Just driving," the woman answered. "We're not causing any trouble." "I didn't say you were," Blake replied. He walked back to his patrol car. As he sat down, he felt uneasy. His training told him this was not normal. It wasn't just about a broken light. Something else was going on. He ran the license plate. What he saw next shocked him. The car was registered to a man named Commander David Harris, a highly decorated war hero, Navy, Marine, and FBI service. But the record also said something else. Commander Harris was listed as deceased 3 years ago. Blake stared at the screen. That can't be right. He looked up at the SUV. The woman was still sitting quietly. The kids hadn't moved. He picked up his radio, but something in his gut told him not to call for backup yet. Not until he knew more. Blake stepped out again and walked back to the SUV. "Ma'am," he said carefully, "this vehicle is registered to David Harris. Is that your husband?" The woman paused. She looked down. Then she said, "He was." Blake waited. "I'm sorry. I read that he passed away?" She nodded. "That's what they said." "What do you mean?" She looked at her children. "He never came home from his last mission, but I don't believe he's gone." The boy looked up and said softly, "Daddy told us to be brave." Blake's chest tightened. "When did he tell you that?" The boy answered, "Before he left. He said if anything happens, keep the flag and the badge. He said it will protect us." Blake crouched down, eye level with the boy. "Do you know what kind of badge that is?" "Yes," the boy said quietly. "It's his FBI badge, but it's special. Daddy said not to give it to just anyone, only the right person." "The right person?" Blake asked. The girl, still holding the flag tightly, finally spoke. "He said we'd know when we see them." Blake stood up slowly. His heart was beating fast now. This wasn't just a family with a broken taillight. This was something bigger, much bigger. He looked back at the license record. David Harris, FBI, deceased. But now his badge was in this boy's hand, and his kids were talking like he might still be alive. "Ma'am," Blake said, I need to understand what's going on. Why are you really out here? The woman didn't answer at first. Then she said, I'm trying to keep them safe. That's all that matters. Safe from who? They're watching us. Always watching. I can't say more. I shouldn't even be talking to you. Blake stepped back. He looked at the SUV again. 2 quiet children, a folded flag, an FBI badge, a missing father, and a mother who feared being followed. This was no routine stop. Suddenly, Blake remembered something from years ago. During a joint, police military training, he had seen a man give a speech about service and family. That man was Commander David Harris. He remembered the way Harris spoke. Brave, calm, powerful, and now, his wife and children were sitting quietly on the side of a road, holding on to pieces of his memory like they were gold. Blake looked around. No other cars, no backup, just him, and the pieces of a mystery that didn't add up. As he stood there, the boy reached out and held the badge up toward Blake. Do you believe us? He asked. Blake didn't know what to say, but deep down, he did. Officer Blake sat inside his patrol car, staring at the screen on his dashboard. He kept looking. At the same name over and over again, Commander David Harris. Status, deceased. But that badge the boy was holding, it looked real. The flag in the girl's hands. Not something children carry for no reason. And the mother's silence said more than words ever could. Blake leaned back and took a deep breath. His mind raced with questions. Are they in danger? Is their father really dead? Why won't the mother speak openly? He needed answers, but he also needed to be careful. Something felt big and dangerous. He stepped out of his car and walked back to the SUV, this time slower, gentler. The mother rolled down the window again. Her eyes were calm but tired. She didn't speak. Blake spoke first. Look, I'm not here to hurt you or scare your children. But this doesn't feel like just a broken taillight. I need to know what's really going on. The woman looked straight ahead. Her voice was quiet. Knowing too much can be dangerous, officer. Dangerous for who? For all of us. Blake crouched a little so he could see the kids again. The twins sat still, just like before. But this time, the boy spoke first. Our daddy told us some people would lie. He said they'd try to find us, to stop us from telling the truth. Blake narrowed his eyes. Who would stop you? The girl held the folded flag tighter and said softly, the people who said he died. Blake felt chills. You don't think your father's dead? The mother finally looked at Blake. I don't know what to believe anymore. They told me he was gone, but I never saw a body, no funeral, just papers, just silence. She paused. Then last year, I got a letter. No return address. It said, protect the children, they know too much. And there was one sentence under that. What did it say? Blake asked. The mother looked away. It said, trust no badge but his. Blake stood up slowly. He turned and walked a few steps away, rubbing the back of his neck. This was bigger than he expected. It wasn't just fear. It was deep fear. And the kids, they were too calm, too quiet. Like they had been trained, prepared. Blake got back into his car. He needed more information. He radioed dispatch. Unit 45 requesting background on Commander David Harris, former Navy, former FBI, deceased 3 years ago. I need details from his last mission. There was silence. Then dispatch replied, negative. That file is restricted. Clearance level red. Blake's heart jumped. Red clearance, he repeated. Why would a dead man's file be restricted? Sorry, officer, that's all we can say. He hung up the radio. Something was very wrong. He typed Commander David Harris into his own laptop. Most of the public information was old, awards, speeches, one photo of him standing with a Group of soldiers. Another photo with 2 FBI agents. But something caught Blake's eye. In one photo, behind Harris, there was a shadowy man in a suit, face blurry. But Blake had seen that face before. He zoomed in. "Wait a minute," he whispered. He had seen that man a long time ago, back during his early days at the academy. He was a guest, speaker, a high-level federal agent, cold eyes, serious tone, the kind of man who doesn't forget anything. Blake stared at the picture. "Why is he in this?" He printed the photo quietly and stepped out of the car again. "Ma'am," he said, "do you know who this man is?" The woman glanced at the photo. Her eyes widened just slightly. "You've seen him before," Blake said. She hesitated, then nodded. "He came to our house once, a few weeks before David disappeared. Said he was from Washington." "What did he want?" "He told David there was something wrong with the mission. He didn't say much, but after that visit, David changed. He packed bags. He told me to prepare for anything. Then he left and never came back." Blake stared at her. "And you think this man is involved in your husband's disappearance?" She nodded slowly. "I don't trust anyone anymore." Suddenly, the boy leaned forward. "Dad said if anything happens, we should go to the safe house." Blake blinked. "What safe house?" The mother turned quickly. "Don't say anything." "But, Mom, he might be the one," the girl whispered. Blake stepped closer. "The one what?" The boy held up the badge again. "The one who believes us. The one who helps." Blake's hands tightened. He was a cop. He had a job. But this wasn't about tickets or rules anymore. This was about a family running from something deep and hidden. "Where is the safe house?" Blake asked. The woman shook her head. "We can't tell you. Not yet." He nodded. "I understand." Blake looked at the children. Their eyes held fear, but also something more. Trust. He walked back to his car again. He needed time. He needed help. But he also needed to be careful. If this went too far, people might start disappearing, including him. He opened the trunk of his car and took out an old notebook. Officer Blake stood by his car, holding the phone close to his ear. His voice was low, his words careful. "Reynolds," he said, "I found something strange. A woman. 2 kids. They say their father is Commander David Harris." The voice on the other end paused. "Harris is dead, Blake. You know that." "That's what the records say," Blake replied. "But I don't think it's the whole truth." "What do you mean?" "There's a flag, a real one, a badge, his FBI badge, and the twins. They say their dad told them to trust no one, that someone's watching them." There was a long silence on the line. Then Reynolds said, "Blake, be very careful. If this is what I think it is, you're already too deep." Click. The line went dead. Blake looked at the phone in shock. He had known Reynolds for years. He was the kind of man who never panicked, never rushed. But that voice, that warning, it felt real, like danger was close. Blake walked slowly back to the SUV. The kids were still quiet. The woman looked straight ahead, not moving. "Ma'am," Blake said gently, "I need you to trust me. I want to help you. But I can't do that if you stay silent." The woman turned her head slowly. Her eyes met his. Tired, guarded, strong. "You said you want to help," she replied. "But what happens when they find out you did?" "Who's they?" Blake asked. She didn't answer. "Is it the FBI? Military? Someone else?" Still no answer. Blake stepped back. "Okay, then help. Me understand? Why are the kids carrying your husband's badge and a flag?" The woman looked down at her hands on the steering wheel. "When David left," she began, "he told me 3 things. 1, never believe the first story. 2, If anything happens, don't go to the police. 3. Only trust the person who sees the truth without being told. Blake's eyebrows raised. What does that mean? She looked at him with sad eyes. I don't know, but I think it means you. Blake felt a chill run down his back. I didn't tell you anything, she said, but you still noticed everything. The kids, the badge, the silence. That's why the twins showed you the badge. The boy nodded. Dad said we'd feel it when we meet the right person. I think you're him. Blake knelt beside the back door. Can I ask something personal? The twins looked at him. Do you remember your dad's voice? His face? The girl nodded slowly. He was brave. He used to tell us bedtime stories about real heroes. But he said heroes sometimes have to disappear to stay alive. Blake looked at the mother. How long have you been running? Almost a year, she replied. Every time we get close to peace, something happens. A phone call, a car following us, a stranger asking too many questions. Why not go to the media? She shook her head. You think I didn't try? I sent letters, emails. Nobody responded. I even walked into a news office once. The next day, someone broke into our house, took my laptop, left nothing but a photo of David, crossed out with red ink. Blake's blood turned cold. Why would someone do this to you? He asked. She answered, because my husband found something powerful. I don't know what it was, but it scared the wrong people. Blake looked down. His hands were shaking. What do you want from me? He finally asked. She looked up at him. Help me get my children to the safe house. After that walk away, forget you saw us. Blake stood still. That's not easy. I'm not asking for easy, she said. I'm asking for safe. Blake looked at the twins. Their eyes told the same story. Fear, hope, silence. He walked back to his patrol car and sat down. He opened the folder he had printed earlier, the one with the photo of Harris and the blurry man in the background. He flipped the photo over. Something was written in small letters at the bottom. Eyes open. Truth hidden. Blake stared at it. These were the same words used in a secret training exercise years ago, a mission where even the instructors weren't told the full plan. Only a few agents knew what really happened, and one of them was Reynolds. Blake picked up the radio again. Dispatch, he said. I'm going to escort a family to their destination. They're involved in a federal matter. I'll report back later. Copy that, Officer Blake. He turned off the radio. He stepped out of the car and opened the back door of the SUV. Let's go, he said. I'll follow you. Stay calm, stay smart. The woman looked at him, unsure. I'm risking everything for this, Blake said. So please, don't lie to me. She nodded. The SUV started moving. Blake followed closely behind. As they drove down the empty road, Blake noticed something in his rearview mirror, a black van, far behind them. But getting closer, he picked up his phone, dialed again. Reynolds, he whispered when the call was picked up. Someone's tailing us. I think it started, Reynolds replied, his voice low and cold. You opened the wrong door, Blake. Now you'll have to decide. Do you follow orders, or do you follow the truth? The road was quiet. Too quiet. Officer Blake followed the black SUV closely. The mother drove with steady hands. The twins sat silently in the back, still holding their father's badge and folded flag, but Blake's eyes stayed on the mirror. That black van behind them, it wasn't normal. It stayed 2 cars back, never got too close, never turned away. Just followed like a shadow. Blake picked up his phone again. Reynolds, he whispered. The van's still behind us. License plate? No plate. There was silence on the other end. Then Reynolds said something that made Blake's skin crawl. If it's the van I think it is, don't stop. Don't talk. Don't even blink. What do you mean? You're not just being followed, Blake. You're being watched. Blake looked back in the mirror. The van had no windows, no markings, just black, like it didn't want to be known. He pressed his siren button once, just a short burst. The SUV in front of him responded quickly and turned down a side road. Blake followed, so did the van. Now the road was narrower. Trees on both sides, no other cars. Blake reached for his radio. "Dispatch, this is Officer Blake. I may have a possible surveillance vehicle trailing us, requesting backup." But the radio went dead. Nothing, no static, no sound. He tried again. "Dispatch, do you copy?" Still silence. He looked at his phone, no signal. His heart began to pound. Up ahead, the SUV stopped suddenly. Blake hit the brakes. He jumped out of his car and ran toward the woman. She lowered the window halfway. "He's still behind us," she said. "I know," Blake replied. "Something's wrong. My radio and phone just went out." The boy in the back seat pointed behind them. "He's speeding up." Blake turned around. The van was coming fast now, too fast. The woman shouted, "Drive!" Blake ran back to his patrol car, jumped in, and turned the wheel hard. He pulled in front of the SUV and hit the gas. Together, the two vehicles sped down the narrow road, but the van stayed close. Suddenly, Blake saw a sharp turn up ahead. He pressed his brakes lightly and flicked his indicator once. The SUV followed. But the van didn't slow down. It turned off its headlights and kept coming. "This isn't a chase," Blake whispered. "This is a hunt." They drove faster. Trees passed like shadows. Every second, the van got closer. Then Blake saw it, an old tunnel up ahead. It was part of an unused railway system. Long, dark, abandoned. He grabbed his mic and called to the SUV, hoping the radio still worked between them. "Turn off! Into the tunnel!" The SUV swerved. Blake followed. Inside the tunnel, it was pitch black. They turned off their headlights. Silence. The van didn't follow. For a long moment, everything was still. Then, footsteps. Not one person. Several. Blake reached for his flashlight and gun. He stepped out of the car and crouched low. He whispered, "Stay inside. Lock the doors." The twins peeked out. The girl hugged the flag tighter. Then a voice echoed from the darkness. "Officer Blake, you're not authorized to be here." It was deep, cold. Controlled, Blake pointed his flashlight forward, but all he saw were shadows. "Who are you?" he shouted. "Show yourself!" Another voice, different this time. Female. "You're protecting the wrong people, officer. Walk away now. We won't ask again." Blake didn't move. "I'm not walking away from kids." He stepped closer, to the sound. Suddenly a figure appeared, dressed in black, face covered. "We know what the twins carry. We know what Commander Harris found. And we know where they're going." Blake aimed his gun. "You come one step closer, I shoot." But the figure didn't flinch. "You think this is about you?" The voice mocked. "We don't need to hurt you, Blake. You'll destroy yourself, trying to save people already marked." From behind him, Blake heard the SUV doors open. The mother stood there, hands up, eyes strong. "Enough!" she shouted. Blake turned. "Get back in the car," but she shook her head. "You want me?" she said to the shadows. "I'm right here." Blake's heart stopped. "No," he said. "Don't do this." The woman looked at him. "They won't stop until they break someone. Better me than my kids." The figure in black stepped closer. "You made your choice." But before anything else could happen, a loud sound filled the tunnel. A car engine, fast, roaring. Another vehicle burst into the tunnel from the far end, headlights on, horn blaring. It was a black Jeep. The shadowy figure turned quickly, a window rolled down, and Reynolds leaned out, holding a badge and a weapon. "FBI!" he yelled. "Stand down!" The figure froze, then turned and ran into the darkness, the A. Others followed. Their footsteps faded. Reynolds parked and jumped out. "You all right?" he asked Blake. Blake nodded, breathless. "What just happened?" "They were real," Reynolds said. "They're part of a rogue group. Ex-military, private intelligence, people who want secrets to stay buried." He looked at the mother. "And she's carrying one of the biggest secrets they've ever tried to hide." Blake stared at her. "What does she know?" Reynolds looked around. "Not here. We need to move." The morning sun broke through the trees as the convoy, Officer Blake, Reynolds, the mother, and the twins, moved down a dirt road toward a hidden cabin deep in the woods. The woman sat in the front of the SUV, quiet but alert. The twins had fallen asleep, their heads resting against each other in the back seat. Reynolds led the way in his black Jeep. Blake followed closely behind. Blake kept thinking about everything: the silent van, the shadowy figures, the words, "You're protecting the wrong people." He had so many questions, but one burned inside him most. What was Commander Harris hiding before he died? At last they reached the cabin. It was small, old, and hidden well behind tall trees and thick bushes. No neighbors, no cameras, just silence. As they parked, Reynolds stepped out and looked around. "We're clear," he said. "This place is off the grid." The woman stepped out next. "This was our backup. David built it in case we ever needed to disappear." Blake looked around. "It feels like no one's been here for years." The woman nodded. "Because no one has." They walked inside. The floor creaked. Dust covered the windows, but everything was just how Harris had left it. There was a locked chest in the corner. Blake noticed it immediately. "What's in there?" he asked. The woman walked toward it slowly. Her hands shook. "I don't know," she said. "David told me. If I ever made it here with the kids, I should open it." Reynolds stepped forward. "Let me check it first." He examined the box. Carefully. No wires, no strange sounds, no hidden traps. Then he looked at the woman. "Go ahead." She pulled a small key from her necklace. Her fingers trembled as she turned it. Click. The chest opened. Inside was a metal case. She opened that too. Blake leaned in, and what he saw made him step back. Inside was a thick file, labeled, in bold red letters, Project Nightshade, classified. Beneath the label were two things: a USB drive, a photo of Commander Harris, standing with a group of men in suits, all smiling, but one face was circled in red. Blake picked up the photo. "Who is this?" Reynolds took a long look. "That is Senator Dalton, one of the most powerful men in the country," the woman nodded. "David told me Dalton was involved in something dark, a secret program. They used disabled children for tests, illegal tests." Blake looked shocked. "What kind of tests?" "Mind control, drugs, tracking, things even the military didn't approve. David found out when he joined a task force by accident. Once he knew, he tried to expose them." Reynolds added, "But before he could, his helicopter went down." Blake's voice was low. "Everyone thought it was an accident." "No," Reynolds said. "It was a warning." Blake looked at the twins sleeping peacefully on the couch. They killed their father because he wanted to protect kids like them, the woman spoke softly. "And now they're after his own children." Blake stared at the USB drive. "We need to see what's on it." Reynolds shook his head. "We can't just plug it into any computer. It could be tracked. We need a secure lab." The woman stepped forward. "No, we do it now, before anyone else finds us." Blake looked around. "Is there a laptop in this cabin?" She nodded and opened a drawer under the bed. An old laptop covered in dust. Reynolds examined it. "It's not connected to the internet. Safe enough." He plugged in the USB and opened the only file inside. A video loaded. Everyone leaned in. It was Harris. He sat in a dark room, face tired, but focused. "If you're watching this," he began, "it means I failed to stop them. But I left everything I know behind. Because the truth must live." He held up photos, documents, names. He listed powerful men and women. He spoke of black sites, of children being used and then erased from records. Then he looked directly into the camera. "My children. If you're seeing this, know your father died trying to protect not just you, but every child like you. Never let them silence the truth. Never trust the ones who smile on TV." The screen went black. Silence filled the cabin. Blake was the first to speak. "We can't keep this hidden. The world has to know." Reynolds nodded. "But we must be careful. If this gets out the wrong way, we all disappear." Blake turned to the mother. "What do you want to do?" She looked at her children, and then at the photo of her husband. "I want to finish what David started." Blake clenched his fists. "Then let's make sure his death wasn't for nothing." Suddenly, the silence was broken by a loud bang, a gunshot. Blake dove to the ground. Reynolds pulled his weapon. More gunshots, this time closer. Reynolds shouted, "They found us!" Blake grabbed the USB and stuffed it into his pocket. "Get the kids! Get to the back door!" The woman ran to the twins, shaking them awake. "Mom," the boy whispered. "No time, baby! We have to move!" Reynolds fired through the window. Blake pulled a small table in front of the door. "Back exit now." But as they reached the back door, it burst open. A figure stepped inside, face covered, gun raised, and behind him, 3 more. They weren't just here to watch anymore. They were here to end it. The moment the back door opened, everything changed. Officer Blake's heart pounded. He pulled his gun and shielded the twins with his body. 4 masked men stood there, black clothes, no words, guns ready. Reynolds yelled, "Get down!" He fired the first shot, hitting the arm of the man in front. The attacker fell back, but the others charged inside. Blake grabbed the boy with one arm, the girl with the other. "Run to the trees! Don't look back!" The mother helped the twins escape through a broken side window. Blake fired 2 quick shots before jumping out behind them. Reynolds stayed behind, holding off the attackers. Blake shouted, "Reynolds, go!" But Reynolds didn't move. "I'll buy you time," he yelled. "Get them to safety!" Blake hesitated. But the kids needed him more. The forest behind the cabin was thick and full of tall trees. Blake led the way, pushing branches aside, guiding the mother and twins down a narrow path. Gunshots echoed behind them. Blake knew Reynolds was alone. The woman's voice shook. "Will he make it?" Blake didn't answer. He couldn't lie. They reached a small clearing with large rocks. Blake motioned for everyone to hide behind them. "We'll rest here," he whispered. "Just for a minute." The twins were shaking. The girl hugged the flag tightly. The boy held the photo of his dad. The mother wiped her tears quickly. "We have to keep moving. They won't stop." Blake nodded. "I know, but I need to think." He pulled out the USB drive from his pocket. This is what they want." The mother said, "It's what they fear." Just then, a twig snapped. Blake spun around, gun ready, from behind the trees. Came a shadow. He aimed, heart racing, but then a voice called out weakly, "It's me, Reynolds." Reynolds stepped into the clearing, limping badly, blood on his shoulder. The mother ran to him. "You're hurt." "I'll live," he said, breathing heavily. "I took 2 down. The others pulled back, but they'll be coming." Blake helped him sit. "You saved us," Reynolds smiled. "I had no choice. That file is bigger than we thought." Blake asked, "Can we get it to someone who'll believe us?" Reynolds looked up. "Yes. There's a man in D.C., retired general, honest, quiet. He trained Harris. We get this file to him. The world changes." The mother looked scared. "But how do we get there?" Blake thought for a second. "We can't use phones. We can't take the highways." Reynolds nodded. We go by back roads, change cars, disappear. Blake stood. Then let's move. Every second counts. They helped Reynolds walk as they moved deeper into the forest, but just when they thought it was over, they heard a voice, loud, clear, electronic. Stop right there. A drone hovered above them, red light blinking. A speaker on it said, "Give us the file, or the children die." Blake raised his gun, but the drone flew higher, out of range. The mother pulled the twins closer. Reynolds whispered, "They've upgraded. They're watching everything." Blake looked at the USB. He had a choice now. Run, hide, or fight back. He stepped into the open and looked straight at the drone. "I won't let you hurt these kids. You want the file? Come get it." The drone beeped, then flew off. Reynolds said, "They're calling for backup. We have maybe 15 minutes. Blake looked at the trees ahead. "I saw a ranger's cabin on the map earlier. About 2 miles. That way. They may have a vehicle." Reynolds nodded. "Let's go." They moved quickly, stepping over branches, climbing over fallen logs. As they reached the edge of a river, the girl slipped. Blake caught her just in time. "You're okay," he whispered. "You're strong, just like your dad." The boy looked up at him. Was he really a hero? Blake smiled. "One of the best I've ever heard of." The boy nodded. "Then I want to be like him." Blake put a hand on his shoulder. "You already are." Suddenly, gunshots rang out behind them. Reynolds shouted, "They're back!" Blake looked ahead and saw the cabin across the river. "We have to cross." The mother held both twins as they stepped into the cold water. The current was strong. The rocks were slippery. Blake helped Reynolds walk. Gunfire tore through the trees behind them. "Faster!" Blake shouted. They reached the other side. The cabin was locked. Blake kicked the door in. Inside was old gear, blankets, a first aid kit, and keys. He grabbed them and rushed outside. An old pickup truck sat in the back. "Everyone in." They climbed in fast. Blake jumped into the driver's seat. The engine sputtered, then roared to life. Reynolds looked behind. "They're close!" Blake hit the gas. Bullets hit the ground near the tires, but they were moving. Fast. The twins ducked down, holding hands. The mother looked at the road ahead. Blake clenched the wheel. They were still being hunted, but now they had hope. They had the file, and they had each other. The old pickup truck sped down the bumpy dirt road. Officer Blake gripped the steering wheel tight. Every turn, every bump, it felt like the truck might fall apart. Reynolds sat beside him, pressing his bleeding shoulder. In the back seat, the mother held the twins close. She whispered softly, "We're almost safe. Just hold on." But deep down, they all knew the truth. They were not safe yet. A black SUV appeared behind them, its lights off, silent, but fast. Blake saw it in the rearview mirror. "We've got company." Reynolds turned. "They don't stop, do they?" Blake shook his head. "Not until they get the file. Or we're all dead." The road narrowed, trees on both sides. Blake pushed the truck faster. The boy looked up. "Who are those men?" His mom answered quietly. "People who are scared of the truth." Blake shouted, "Hold on!" He made a sharp turn. The truck nearly slid off the road, but Blake kept control. The SUV stayed close, too close. Then, bang! A shot hit the back window. Glass shattered. The twins screamed. Blake yelled, "Everyone down!" Reynolds fired back through the broken window, forcing the SUV to slow a little. The road ended at an old wooden bridge. Underneath, a river rushed loudly. Blake didn't stop. He drove straight onto the bridge. Wood creaked. The truck wobbled, but it made it across. Behind them, the SUV stopped at the edge. The enemy didn't dare cross. Reynolds laughed weakly. "They're not ready to die just yet." But Blake knew this wasn't over. He drove until they reached an old gas station on the edge of a forgotten town. It looked abandoned, but there was a small garage beside it. Blake pulled in and parked behind the building. hidden from the road. They all got out. The mother checked the twins for cuts. Reynolds leaned against the wall, pale from blood loss. Blake stepped away, pulled out the USB, and looked at it again. He turned to Reynolds. "You said there's a man in D.C. who can help?" Reynolds nodded. "Retired General Walker. He's clean. He was like a second father to Harris." Blake made a decision. "We go to him. Tonight." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "That's 300 miles. "I don't care," Blake said. "We finish this." The mother walked over. "We'll come too." Blake looked at her. "It'll be dangerous." She stood tall. "My children have already lost their father. I won't let them grow up in a world where his truth is buried." Just then, a noise from inside the gas station. Blake pulled his gun. A man stepped out. Old beard, wearing overalls. "Y'all look like trouble," he said. Blake didn't lower his gun. "We just need a ride. Quiet one." The man looked at the twins and then at Reynolds' wound. He sighed. "Follow me." He led them into the garage and pulled off a dusty cover from a silver van. "Don't look like much, but it runs. No GPS, no trackers." Blake stared at him. "Why are you helping?" The man shrugged. "Your badge tells me you're a good man, and their faces," he pointed to the kids, "tell me someone real bad is after you." Blake nodded. "Thank you." They loaded Reynolds into the van. The kids sat quietly in the back, holding each other's hands. As they drove off into the night, the mother whispered, "We're coming, David. We're going to finish this." But far behind them, back on the bridge, the black SUV was no longer alone. 3 more vehicles had arrived. A man in a suit stepped out, his face cold, his voice even colder. "Find them. Burn every road if you must. That file doesn't leave this country." A soldier beside him asked, "What if they reach the general?" The man didn't blink. "Then the general dies too." Back in the van, Blake drove through the night. Reynolds, half conscious, said, "If we make it to D.C., the world will finally know what Harris died for." Blake nodded. "We're not just saving 2 kids. We're saving hundreds more." The girl leaned her head against her brother's shoulder, and for the first time that night, she smiled. Just a little, because hope was still alive. The sky was still dark when the van reached the edge of Washington, D.C. Blake drove quietly, his eyes sharp. They had made it through small towns, back roads, and forests. No lights, no signals, just hope and fear. Reynolds lay weak in the back, his shirt soaked with blood. But he was alive. The mother held her children close. She didn't speak. Her face was calm, but her hands trembled. The girl whispered, "Are we safe now?" Blake didn't answer. He didn't want to lie. They stopped near an old army base outside the city. There was no gate, no guards, just an iron fence and a small house behind it. Blake stepped out and helped Reynolds walk. "This is the place?" he asked. Reynolds nodded. "If he's still alive, this is where he'll be." Blake knocked 3 times. A moment passed. Then the door opened. An old man stood there, tall, strong, white hair, sharp eyes. He looked at Reynolds. "Michael?" the man said. "Is that you?" Reynolds smiled weakly. "Hello, General Walker." The general helped them inside. Once everyone was safe, Blake pulled out the USB. "We need your help. This file, it has proof about Project Nightshade. Commander Harris was killed for this." The general looked at the children, then at the mother, and finally at the drive. He nodded. "Let's see what they tried so hard to bury." He plugged the USB into a protected computer. As the files opened, the general's face changed. Photos, names, videos, secret recordings. He read the report slowly. "My God," he whispered. This is bigger than anything I've seen." Blake asked. "Will you help us bring this to light?" The general stood up. "I trained David Harris. I watched him become one of the best soldiers in our country. If he gave his life for this truth, then I'll help finish what he started." He made a call to a trusted news contact, a former military reporter now working at a major network. In less than 1 hour, a small group of honest journalists arrived. They interviewed the mother, looked at the file, and recorded the twins' story. Blake stayed close. Reynolds rested quietly, finally smiling. By morning, the news had broken across every major TV channel. Classified program exposed. Children used in illegal government experiments. Whistleblower killed. The story shook the nation. The photo of Commander Harris in uniform, holding his children, was everywhere. The faces of the twins were blurred, but their story was told. That same morning, Senator Dalton was arrested. Others followed. Protests began. Investigations launched. In a quiet office, the general turned to Blake. "You did good, son." Blake nodded. "I just did what was right." The mother approached him. "You saved my children." Blake looked at her, eyes full of emotion. "No, their father did. I just finished his mission." She smiled. "He would have trusted you. Thank you." Reynolds was taken to a hospital for recovery under full protection. The twins were placed in a safe home. With their mother, no more running, no more hiding. A few days later, a ceremony was held for Commander Harris. A flag was folded and placed in his daughter's hands. She stood tall, no longer scared, and beside her, her brother saluted like his father once did. Blake watched from a distance, tears in his eyes. For the first time, the truth had won. The lies were broken, and a family, once hunted, was finally free.